Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today we have a video on the new Urban Decay Naked Wild West palette. This is the most recent palette in their Naked series. This is what the inside looks like. When I first saw the promo photos of this, I was kind of like, not really sure how I felt about it. I was a little confused by the theme and the color story, especially with the pop of blue. I felt like that was very 2018 and I was just a little confused, but I did receive this in PR and a lot of you said that you would like to see some looks with it, so that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna do 3 looks, and then I also want to compare it to some other existing palettes that are on the market that I have. It does retail for $49 and it is currently available on the Urban Decay website and Sephora. I'm not sure when it'll be launching at Ulta, but I'm sure it will be there soon. And this palette is 100% vegan, so there's no animal ingredients or insect ingredients in any of the shades. It seems like Urban Decay is making an effort to release as many vegan products as possible lately, which I think is amazing. The packaging is beautiful. They always seem to put a lot of effort into their packaging and it feels very sturdy, and on the front it's got this like metallic snakeskin design to go along with the Wild West theme, which I think is really cool. We've got a mirror inside, and it does also come with their usual dual-ended brush that has sort of a flat end and a slightly fluffier crease brush on the other end. And like all their Naked palettes, it comes with 12 shades. You're getting 4 shimmers and 8 mattes. And it seems to be a nice mix of warm and cool tones. I like that there's some grayish taupes, and then there's also some warm bronzes and reds. And then you of course have those 2 teals. Those are kind of your pops of color. I do feel like there's some pretty decent variety in here, but in the 3 looks that I'm gonna do 1 very neutral everyday look, 1 kind of warm neutral look with a pop of color, and then 1 look that's like full-on dramatic color. That's today's look if you can't tell. So let's go ahead and hop on into look number 1 and we'll just see how these shadows actually perform on the eyes. I know a lot of people turn to Naked palettes for very like everyday kind of work appropriate type looks, so that's what the first look is going to be. I do want to kind of focus on this like more neutral half of the palette, although we probably will dip into some of these others. I think first I'm going to go into the shade Nudie here, and I'm just going to use the fluffier end of the dual-ended brush that came with the palette. And I did already prime my eyes with the Urban Decay Primer Potion, by the way. Gotta say, I don't love this brush. I do wish that this fluffier end was just a little bit fluffier and not quite as dense. But it does work in a pinch. I just do prefer something a little bit fluffier for my transition shade. So I'm going to use this e.l.f. fluffy brush here. Next I'm going to go into this shade Laredo here. It's like this kind of cool matte taupe with a slightly denser crease brush, and focus that a little bit more in the crease and the outer third. This is literally my first time applying any of these shadows on my eyes, so this is a true like first impression right now. Going back with my fluffy brush with a little bit of Nudie again, making sure those crease shades are nice and diffused. Taking an even smaller crease brush now, and I'm going to go into the shade Pony Up, which is this deep gray. Love a good gray eyeshadow, by the way. And I'm kind of focusing that on the outer third of the upper lash line and the outer V. And I went ahead and kind of took that into the crease too. I am barely tapping my brush in there each time and just kind of slowly building. Then taking my fluffy brush again and just going over that one more time. So one of the shades that I was most excited about is this one called Cowboy Rick. This is a silver. So I want this to be my lid shade. I'm gonna try just applying this with my finger. Now lately I've been using most shimmers over my NYX glitter primer because it just makes them really pop, but I do want to see how they perform without that, at least on one eye, because I know not everybody owns a glitter primer. Oh. That's pretty. I gotta say, when I first swatched these shimmers, I felt like they were a little sheer, but I actually feel like it's applying really nicely with my finger. Ooh, that's pretty. Getting a tiny bit of fallout. I am gonna see how this applies with a brush. It's a little bit less intense with the brush, so I think the way that I would use it would be either with the NYX glitter primer, and then either a brush or my finger would probably apply it just fine. And then, like they put in most of their palettes, there is a matte cream color. That is the kind of shade I typically use on my brow bone and just to kind of clean up the edges, so that's what I'm doing with that. I am going to go back into this silver shade with my finger on this eye just because I like it to pop a little bit more. I'm really liking this just soft, cool, taupey eye. I think this is just a really pretty, like, everyday eye look. If you wanted to make it a little bit softer, you could leave out the pony up shade and just kind of use that lighter taupe to deepen up your outer corner, and then it wouldn't be quite as dramatic. But I think I'm just going to go into a mix of pony up and Laredo on my lower lash line, and then I'm probably going to leave it at that. All right, so that is look number one all put together. I've got mascara on. For the lips, I'm wearing a combo of the Jordana Lip Liner in Rockin' Rose and the e.l.f. Seriously Satin Lipstick in Cream. But I really like that, and I like that there's some like sort of peachy mattes in here that I feel like always look good alongside grays. It just kind of warms things up a bit, gives things a little bit more life, because sometimes gray can make you look a little dead. I feel like the shade Nudie really helps everything blend into my skin tone. So that is look number one. All right, so let's go ahead and get on into look number two. Look number one was a very cool toned, everyday, neutral kind of look. This time I want to dip into some of the warmer tones, but I do still want to keep it on the neutral side and just have a pop of color, probably with this lighter teal right here. So I'm going to start out with the shade Spur. It looks a little bit warmer and more like peachy than Nudie, but these two shades look really similar as far as depth. So I'm curious to see how different they look actually on my eyes. So I'm just going to take a fluffy brush and apply that. My lids have already been primed as always. So that definitely is pulling a little bit more like peachy yellow, whereas Nudie yesterday was more just like neutral beige. Next I'm going to go into the shade Ghost Town. This is like the matte rusty red. And just apply that to my outer corner and the crease. Then just going back to that original fluffy brush with no extra product on it and making sure all of that is blended. And take a little bit more of Spur along the edges. Alright, so for the lid, I'm going to take this gold here called Hold'em on my flat shader brush. Just going to see how this applies to the brush. I feel like it's going on a little sheer. I feel like this isn't picking up great on my brush. Alright, I'm going to try it with my finger. I do feel like if you want like a lot of payoff out of these shimmers, you got to use your finger. And normally I would use my NYX glitter primer with most shimmers just because I really like that foiled look, but try not to use it for these looks just because I'm sure not everyone has that or uses that product. Yeah, it just feels a little bit dry and flaky. Alright, I also want to take a little bit of this shade here called Rustler. This is like a medium bronzy brown metallic. I'm going to try that out on a brush too. This one did seem a little bit creamier when I swatched it compared to the other shimmers. I'm just going to apply this to like the outer third of my lid. So that's it with a brush. It's kind of hard to see when I also have the gold right next to it, which is which, but do my finger on this side. I feel like that one is a little bit more pigmented than some of the other shimmers. I am getting a tiny bit of fallout from that gold, but it's not too bad. Alright, so for our pop of color, I want to try out this shade right here called Bud. This is that lighter turquoise, and I'm going to use this as a winged liner. And I'm just taking a dry brush for right now. This is from Perfusion. It's an angled brush. I'm going to just see how well this applies. Okay, that is really pretty. I definitely, had to kind of slowly build it. It wasn't like full-on creamy pigment right away, but I do think that the final result is really pretty. For this side, I am going to wet my brush just to see if that makes a difference. I'm just going to use this Urban Decay Chill setting spray. I'm going to dip into the shadow first and then spray it. Okay, that seems to be going on a lot more intense right off the bat. So I definitely do prefer the side with the wet brush. I think it went on a lot more pigmented and a little bit foiled as well. But if you're wanting like a soft, almost watercolor-esque wing. I think that the other side looks great too. It just kind of depends on your preference. But I am going to go back over that side with a wet brush just to get the intensity that I was hoping for. All right, so for the lower lash line, I'm going to try out a little bit of this text shade. In the third look, we're going to use a lot more of this, but since we're doing just a little pop of teal this time, I'm going to smudge this on the outer part of my lower lash line and just kind of connect that to the wing. All right, I do want to blend that a little bit, so I'm just taking a bare brush here and smoking that out a tiny bit. Then I'm going to take some more of Rustler here on the inner part of my lower lash line. And finally, I'm going to take a little bit more of Hold'em, the gold, on my inner corner just with my finger, my pinky finger. And then I'm going to highlight my brow bone with Standoff and also just use that to clean up the edges as I always do. Alright, so I went ahead and finished off the eye look with some mascara, and then on the lips I have a combo of the Mented Peach lip pencil and the Burt's Bees lip crayon in Santorini Sunrise, keeping with like the warm theme. And I really like this look. I know it's kind of cliche to do like, you know, the neutral look with a pop of blue, but that is one of the ways that you can use this palette if you are kind of just like dipping your toe into color. Another thing you could do is use that turquoise in the inner corner. That is look number 2, and let's go ahead and get on into look number 3. It is the same day. I just changed sweaters and attempted to take off just the eye makeup. I ended up having to like redo my concealer too. Today I want this look to be like predominantly teal. I want it to be a pretty colorful look just so we can see how much you can really do with this palette. I'm gonna start with the shade Nudie here. That's the more neutral of the 2 shades that I would use as a transition color, just to kind of start things off. All right, then I'm gonna take some of the shade Laredo, just targeted more in the crease, just to deepen that up a little bit. I do think I want this look to be a little bit cooler. Next, going into Tex, which is this beautiful, rich, deep teal. And I'm going to take that on a small shader brush from Real Techniques. And I'm going to start just packing this on the outer corner. I want this look to be slightly winged out in shape. In fact, I think I'm going to take some tape actually just to make sure that this look turns out as clean as possible since we're working with some deep shades here. I took some of the sticky off on my hand just so it's not like super sticky. And mostly just packing this onto the outer third of my lid. I feel like this is actually packing on really nicely. It's pigmented, but it's not like the shade in the ABH palette that almost is more like a pressed pigment. This one is just applying like a nice pigmented, blendable shadow. And I also feel like it's going on very true to color. I'm going to take this small crease brush from e.l.f. It's their detail crease brush with nothing on it and just try to make sure that edge is nice and blended. Next, we're going to go into the shade Bud here. Once again, I'm going to see how this goes on with just a brush. Alright, I don't love the way this is going on with the brush. I do feel like it's just a tad sheer. Kind of building it up. It's kind of one of those shades that's like, it builds slowly, but you can definitely get some payoff from it. It's just you may need to build it up a little bit, which I feel like is on brand for a Naked palette. Not everybody that buys a Naked palette is necessarily wanting like super duper pigmented bright colors. However, I do like my shadows to be very foiled. So I actually am going to bring in my NYX glitter primer for this eye just so we can see how different that looks. Taking a tiny bit of that and just patting it onto the area where I want the teal. And that essentially just creates a really tacky base to hold on to shimmers. Alright, yeah, that's more like it. That NYX glitter primer makes every shimmer just pop so beautifully. Just gonna take a little more with my finger onto this eye. Alright, so I think I'm ready to take this tape off. Ooh, that is sharp. So I'm going to dip back into Nudie here, just to get everything blended out. That's essentially my transition shade. Oh, I'm actually really liking this look. Then taking Standoff as my brow bone shade. Just want to blur this edge a tiny bit. Still want it to be nice and sharp though. Then taking some of Cowboy Rick, that's silver, in my inner corner. Yeah, I do feel like some of these shimmers are just a little dry and flaky, and they do need to be built up if you want them nice and intense. But I mean, that is pretty though. It's just kind of a texture thing. But I've seen that in other Naked palettes as well. Taking text again on my lower lash line and kind of connecting it to that upper wing there. I'm going to take a little bit of Bud in the inner part of my lower lash line. Just for a little pop of shimmer. I really like this look. This is fun. Okay, so just finished off that look. I did tightline my upper lash line with the CoverGirl 24-Hour Kohl eyeliner in black. And then I'm also wearing the Marcel Volume Extension Electric Mascara. This is what I've been wearing in all three looks. And then on the lips, I once again used the Mented Peach Lip Pencil and topped it with the Dose of Colors Lip Gloss in On Repeat. And that is look number 3. Very bold, a little out of my comfort zone, but I had so much fun creating this look. I felt like the shadows were all very easy to work with, especially the mattes. I did feel like the shade Bud and also Cowboy Rick, those are both a little sheer, a little dry and flaky, similar to the gold that we used in the last look. I do feel like those 3 shimmers don't quite give me the color payoff that I would want, but I can easily fix that and just use my NYX glitter primer underneath or wet my brush or use a finger. But applied with just a dry brush on regular primer, they are a little sheer. You do kind of have to build them up. So if you remember in my last duping new releases video, before I had this palette in my possession, I did try to dupe all of these shades with shades that I already have in my collection, and I wanted to go ahead and compare what those swatches look like to the actual swatches of these. And you will see in the photo that the shades that I found in my existing collection really did a good job duping this palette. The only one that I didn't really have a perfect dupe for was the shade Bud. I have several like aqua blue colors in my collection, but this one has just a little bit more green in it than anything else. And in my duping video, I actually ended up mixing 2 shades. I mixed Makeup Geek Pegasus with ColourPop La Playa, and the 2 of those together are still just a little bit brighter than this one, so that's the only one that I didn't really have a dupe for. And there were some that were just slightly different in undertone. I know like the shade Cyborg in Sultry has a slightly deeper base than Cowboy Rick in here, but most of those shades that I had found were in 3 of my ABH palettes, Subculture, Sultry, and Modern Renaissance. I didn't have like a single palette dupe for this in my collection, obviously, but if you have any neutral palettes in your collection already, I can guarantee you probably have a lot of these shades. I also noticed it had some similar shades with my ABH Soft Glam palette. ABH Soft Glam is a very warm neutral palette, and I was able to dupe a lot of the neutral shades from Wild West with this one. And another kind of obvious one to me was Subculture, especially with the teal. This was one of the first palettes I thought of when I thought of similar palettes in my collection. And again, there are several warm neutral shades, but there actually aren't that many overlapping shades with Subculture, but you definitely can still get a similar vibe with that one because this one also has blue and green and bronzy tones. And then the only other palette that I saw a few similarities with was the Shared Planet Polar Bear palette. This one is very different. It's very icy, whereas Naked Wild West is a lot warmer. But it's sort of similar to that aqua blue in there, and then a few of these cool tones are similar to some of the cool tones in Wild West. A few other palettes that I've heard this compared to that I don't actually have are the ColourPop Dream Street palette. That one looks pretty similar, maybe a little bit brighter, whereas this one is kind of muted. Another one that I actually just recently decluttered is Naked Honey. These first 4 shades all look like shades that were in Naked Honey. Another one that I've heard quite a few people compare this to is the Beached palette from Urban Decay. That was a limited edition one that came out a few years ago. That one had a few teals and warm tones as well, so if you have that, you may be able to create a lot of similar looks to this. So those are just a few comparisons in case you are trying to talk yourself out of buying this. I can guarantee you if you have a handful of palettes already in your collection, you'll probably be able to find a lot of similar shades, especially with those neutrals. So just to kind of wrap things up with my thoughts on this now that I've done several looks with it, I honestly am really enjoying this palette now. Again, when I first saw those initial launch photos, I was kind of on the fence. I was just like, I don't really get it. I'm still a little confused about the Wild West theme. It just seems a little random to me, but as someone who likes both cool and warm tones, I've really been enjoying all the neutral shades in here. And I also love teal and turquoise. Those are 2 of my favorite colors in general, and I've had some fun playing with those 2 shades, but I don't necessarily think that any of the shades in here are all that unique. I think that it would be pretty easy to talk yourself out of this if you already have a good handful of palettes already in your collection, like the ones that I mentioned. But if the color story really speaks to you and you are a fan of the Urban Decay Naked formula, I think you would really like this. The downside to this that I mentioned a few times throughout my looks was that the shimmers are a little dry and a little bit sheer. For me, that's easy to remedy with my NYX glitter primer or just by wetting my brush or applying them with my finger. But I feel like that's kind of a common theme among a lot of the Urban Decay Naked palettes, is that I've just noticed a lot of their shimmers are a little flaky, a little dry, but if you prefer softer shimmers, you may love that. And I feel like all of the shades in here are the kind of shadows that you can build up to your desired intensity. If you want to keep them nice and soft and sheer and light, you can do that. But if you want really intense pigment, you can do that as well. You just kind of have to work with them. So all of that to say, I really am enjoying this palette now that I have it. Would I have bought it with my own money? I don't think so. Although now that I have it, I really am enjoying it. I could see myself keeping this for a while and having a lot of fun with it. I think it really just comes down to what you have already in your collection, if it's in your budget, if you feel really inspired by the color story. I don't think you'll be too disappointed as long as you don't mind some kind of softer shades. But I think that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, I'd love it if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you've not already. And I hope to see you again very soon in my next video. Bye.